sound from my vision. If it wants to move, yeah, it wants to move. Good. So, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to start, as always, by introducing myself. When I've arranged the sound, yeah, that should be it. Okay, so my name is Eric. I am a accessibility specialist, accessibility lead of the web component team of ING, a large Dutch bank. I am basically responsible for the accessibility of all the web components that we make. So all the components that get reused all throughout the organization, they should be accessible. Everybody should be able to use them, and that's my responsibility. Next to that, I'm also an accessibility consultant, so I do audits, I check websites, and what we're going to do today is we're going to check Element. And it's supposed to be renamed recently. I already saw, maybe it's here in the website. Element, formerly known as Vector and Riot, is a matrix web client. I don't know anything about Element. Somebody else wrote a blog with some feedback. I've seen quite some issues on GitHub that were actively replied to. I know they work on accessibility and all kinds of issues that get submitted, but I've never used it. I just made an account. I don't know what it is, what it does. I didn't have my account. I don't have any, nothing. I'm just completely new to this. I never used it, no channels, no nothing. All I know so far is that it's a bit like Slack, except it's open source, which is of course a big improvement. And another client that I know that's in the same field is Mattermost. Discord is of course also very popular among gamers. We've already looked at Discord, and this one was called Vector or Riot, but it's now called Element. And it's a matrix web client built using the Matrix React SDK. So it's made with React. We're going to look at the web version. They even say what they support, which is rather nice. So this is the GitHub page. To be clear, the GitHub page, I'm going to share it in the chat right away, because why not? We can share whatever. This is on GitHub. It's open source. They say we support the last two major versions of Chrome, Firefox, Safari on desktop OSs. So that's nothing about mobile and nothing about Internet Explorer or Edge. So that's not an interesting choice. Desktop OSs mean Mac OS, Windows and Linux versions. So they do support Linux. Not supported everything else. So for accessing Element on an Android or iOS device, we currently recommend the native apps Riot Android and Riot iOS. Okay, so just the fact that they say they don't support mobile browsers makes me very curious. Can we zoom in on things? Yeah, I already got a reply in the chat. There's a native Android and iOS app. That's probably the best experience. That's often with these app-like websites. If you want to get the best experience, you probably get pointed to the app that they use. But still, the web version should be zoomable, so you should be able to enlarge it by quite a bit. We're probably going to see if that works or not. Getting started. Well, this is all for contributing or running your own version. Probably, I'm not going to go into that. I still had this tab open. It's heavily zoomed in because I just registered. And what was kind of funny, there was a checkbox, and the checkbox seemed to have a label. And usually when you have a label, that label is the name of the checkbox, the accessible name as we call it. But also when you click a label, it should select the text box. But in this case, the actual label was a link. So clicking it would open another page. And it's already gone because it's been updated and I've already moved to another page. But that was the first thing that I thought, hey, that's an unusual pattern and probably not something people like. Then I got into the actual web client, I guess we call it. It's pretty zoomed in because I want to be able to show it on the stream. And it was quite interesting because I had 3 steps. You still see here it's step 3 of 3. And I don't think I can close this step. So I get this sort of pop over. And it says learn more, but there's no X or cancel or whatever. So if this is some sort of tour, it's like you have an obligated tour guide. No, it's like a tour guide you can't avoid. So The first two steps were optional, but this one, it's apparently very important. Right is now element, and I can only click more, learn more, or I'm gonna click on things. If I click here, will it close? No, I don't have rooms, so maybe that helps. So I can use the app in the background, but this is staying. Create a new community. I don't think we need that. I can even try emptying the URL, refreshing it. And when I refresh it, it comes back. So I have to learn more. Even if I was not curious, I have to learn more at this point. So I guess that's what we do. I click learn more. And then it says we're excited to announce Riot is now Element. You're already signed in and good to go here. But you can also grab the latest version of the app on all platforms. Yeah. And learn more. I was already learning more, but sure. Then we can see this might not be a perfect modal window. I can still interact with the background. Oh, and now I click it. Learn more again. So I can close it by clicking away. But I have to press done to close. Okay, so there are some things that could be improved in the registration. So this is pretty empty. You have these public chats and public rooms. Oh, I'm getting an invite right away. Probably somebody watching. Exciting. So let me check what this is. These fold in, so they are expandables. I'm gonna check the invite later. Thanks already. I'm gonna have a good look, but I have to see what we're dealing with here, just because there's so many things we can check. So this is a sort of expandable element, except that this is the div, and then there's a div above it with a aria label, and there's a div above that with also an which one should we have here? Which is the one that's, you would say, so there's also aria level, which indicates that it's a so the interesting part is here that you see all these different elements that have aria added to it, and it gives the impression that somebody has been working on this, that they thought, hey, let's turn this into something accessible. Hey Marijn, good time zone to you as well. I was just busy with time zones again before I started up the stream, and I always expect North American people to know what time zone we are, because I don't know. I'm Dutch, we never use time zones. We are certainly not large enough to have two time zones. Oh, we got a reply in the chat. I'm the guilty one for making that aria tree view and most of the other accessible components of the app. Well, then there's something that stands out here, is that you have this component and it has a role, and it probably generates an accessible name, but I cannot tab to it. So I'm just going to try it here. I'm starting in this search field. I'm going to press tab once. I'm going to go to this button, and I'm going to rooms, which is, which one is that? This element maybe? Oh, this one has the tab index 0. So it's only this one. It's arrow navigation with the tree view. Yeah, the thing is, often when you put a role on something, you want it to be able to be focused. Otherwise, the accessible name will not be used. So you have an aria label. I don't need to scroll too fast. You have an aria label here. You have an aria label here on the roles group. A lot of people will not see these labels because this doesn't even have a role. So it's really just a div with a name. You say the aria tree view pattern exactly the example has it exactly like this, using row from tab index for tree view. Well, we can just try that. I think I've got my sound on a reasonable level. I'm gonna lower the sound even more.
Storybook, element document, complementary landmark.
So what you're hearing now is NVDA, a screen reader. I'm used to Mac, used to using VoiceOver, and this is interesting to hear always. So I'm gonna tap once, and it goes to a button, it says blank. What does that mean, that it says blank? Probably that there's no text inside of this button. So my screen reader does not know what kind of name to give it. I'm just going to check it really quickly.
Developer tools frame. Developer to
And it's a div with a title. But my screen reader, NVDA,
element blank.
well, let's give it a more honest target. I'm gonna put on Chrome, because
New
NVDA works slightly better with Chrome than with Firefox. Now when it's full screen, yeah.
alert, we're excited to announce Riot is now
Ooh,
element.
I need to learn more
Learn
again.
more button. We're button
I keep learning. Zooming in. Oh, not too far.
Two hut complementary landmark. Search edit.
Ooh,
Element
that's
model.
different.
Element document. Element explore rooms button.
Explore Rooms button. That's more like it. So it does have a name. It's just not visual. That's much better.
Rooms tree view.
Rooms tree view.
Level 1 people expanded 1 of 1.
Yeah, so it's focused.
List options menu button. People expanded 1 of 1 level 1. List start chat button. Send a direct message. Start chat. List op. People. Rooms expand. People rooms list option.
Oh, this must have been very complicated to create. I mean, tree view is probably one of the most challenging patterns to get right. And then you have these extra buttons in there.
List options menu button. Collapse sub menu. Create room button. List options menu. Activity radio menu item. List option.
Oh.
Create room. List active list.
I'm not sure how I should be.
Search list options menu.
I press
collapse sub
enter,
activity radio menu item.
and I would expect
List op create
to then be able to tab or arrow key, but neither work. I'm just gonna press buttons. That's how. So the pop-up doesn't work, but I'm not gonna judge by this. This is like the most complicated part of the whole website, probably. Yeah, and there's a link now in the chat saying it's based on the YARIA practices. The problem with the practices is it's always a bit hard to explain. But YARIA is basically a technique. It's a specification, and these examples that are online, they are not meant to be copied, but they are examples of how the spec should work in a perfect world. And I don't think I know any other field which had something like this. But basically, quiet. If this ARIA stuff would be supported perfectly, then all these examples would be perfect examples as well. But the reality is that ARIA is not supported perfectly, I'm afraid. Which means that if you use different browser screen reader combinations, for example, you might get results that are not the ones that are intended by the makers. But I'm not going to judge this thing by the screen reader test. I'm not going to judge this by the tree view widget, because it's the hardest part probably. Actually, I'm going to exit the screen reader. The most important part we now know is what it's meant to be and how it works. Okay, so the issue on the context menu is broken focus outlines and is known, will hopefully get sorted soon. Oh, that would be nice. A lot of people depend on using the keyboard. I used a screen reader here as an example, because you don't just navigate, you also hear something. And you know what you're navigating that way. Even if you don't have an outline, you often hear something, and I didn't hear anything. But when you just use the keyboard, and a lot of people use the keyboard, I'm a power user, as they call it. I like to do a lot of stuff with my keyboard. But it is also the case that a lot of assistive technology, so a lot of tools that people use, whether they are physical or whether it's software, a lot of this assistive technology works through the keyboard API. So even if you're using a switch control, I'm just going to show an image of it, because you see what I see. Switch control. I'm gonna see game consoles. I'm just gonna say switch control accessibility maybe. Yeah, this is a pretty good example. And we're gonna see no, old Google, new Google. So just to give an impression, this big red button is what they call a switch control. Some people use this to navigate their websites, apps, whatever on their screen. It's probably something like what Stephen Hawking used as well. It can be integrated into a headrest or a wheelchair or whatever. There are many ways to operate with this, but in the end, the way it interacts with your content is through the keyboard API. So if you want to know if your website is working, if you want to know if people can use it, using the keyboard is one of the first steps. So I'm just going to start from the beginning here. If I press tab in my Firefox, it first focuses the page. I'm not exactly sure why. It's not... I'm going to inspect. I still like my front end. So I'm going to focus within again. It looks like it focuses the body or something. Something big. Now I have to remember, what is it, $0? Yeah, it focuses the body. I'm not quite sure why it does that. Ignore all the error messages that you see. But the first thing, it focuses the body, then this button. Then it focuses the name, which brings up something. Then it focuses the E icon, which probably does nothing. Or it it does the same thing. So it goes to the whole thing. Then the E icon, then the... Oh, and not the dots. So what you see here is that when you use your mouse, you can click on my name, you can click on the icon, you can click on the 3 dots. I think every company has a different name for the 3 dots. But when you use your keyboard, it's actually 2 stops. One for the whole thing and one for just the circle icon. And I can even right click. Right click also opens up the menu. Does that always work? No, here I can just right click. So I'm not quite sure why right click opens up the menu here. It might be just coding, checking the wrong events in JavaScript or something. I'm just gonna have a quick look. Ooh, I see all these type errors. I'm ignoring errors because I use all these plugins that block half of your website. It's not a reasonable way to look at things like that. So there's title user menu, ARIA label user menu, ARIA has pop-up true, ARIA expanded false, role is button, top index 0, tab index 0. Okay, so that's the whole thing. I can say that the title attribute is probably redundant. What is the URL? Well, I can give you the main URL. You need to check an account. You make an account to actually see this. So this is Element. It's a bit like Slack, like Mattermost, like many communication software that I've seen, except that it's open source. That's the good part. I've never used it before, so everything I see right now is new for me. It's completely new, which I think is good. So we get surprised by lots of stuff. I shouldn't get stuck in too much stuff, but still. So we have this thing here with which is basically a button which shows a menu, which is pretty good. Hey, good evening or good afternoon wherever you are. I think as we say it now, good time zone. So this is basically a button that shows a menu and it works on left click. That's pretty good. That's pretty much what you expect. The strange stuff here is that it also works with the right click, which is unexpected, and that with the keyboard you can also go to this. And it's an image here inside a span where the role is button. So you've got something that here you've got an issue. The thing is, you've got a button inside of a button. You've got interactive content inside of interactive content. When I click here, the avatar is already a solved issue, but good for pointing it out. Oh, great. I'm just very happy that you're working on stuff, you know. We can create all these issues. I just talked about it today. If there's one thing that people in the accessibility world can do, they can write. I mean, they can write books of issues and books of things you could improve. But the good stuff is that it's actually handled. So what you have here is that there's a button inside of a button, basically. They have the role button because they are using ARIA, but they could have been native buttons. They could have been button elements. One of them could have been a link. Doesn't matter really for the case, but you have two interactive elements inside each other. So when I try to click one, I could also be clicking the other, I don't know. Then you have to get into maybe CSS Z index or something. Basically, HTML says don't put interactive content into interactive content. I understand that completely, because it's so hard to guess what to expect. So if I don't know what to expect, how does the browser even know? That's basically my issue with putting interactive content inside interactive content. So if you want to clean this up, I would say lose all the aria on the avatar, basically. So we can probably check. We're going to say issues. I'm not going to check if it's open or not. Avatar. Maybe we find something. You see there's a lot of things happening, and I see a name here that I see in the chat. So if we need any confirmation, here it is. And I like this. I see there's a lot of activity. Oh, you've even got a pull request for it. Even better. See, that's the luxury of somebody in the chat that actually works on this. So fix base avatar wrongly using buttons when it needs not. Yeah, that's a nice title. This looks like this looks nothing to do with buttons and entirely to do with invalidity truthy checks. So there's probably some testing being done. Base avatar uses an accessible button. If you pass an on click. Yeah, so basically it was a button when it didn't need to be a button. So far, how would you rank Element alongside Slack and Mattermost? Well, sometimes there is software that I don't want to test. Knowing some things about accessibility is like a blessing and a curse. And sometimes you open a website and the first thing you do is you start inspecting the code. I've used Slack and Mattermost professionally, and I try to not inspect. They are both very complicated systems. They are real web apps, you know. It's real-time communication. You have a lot of moving parts. You have an account. It's all dynamic. I wouldn't know. Honestly, I never really checked the accessibility of Slack or Mattermost. I do know that Slack has a rather infamous channel on web accessibility. And every now and then they check there for feedback, which I think is a good sign. So Slack is actively looking for feedback. I may have checked Mattermost once out of curiosity, and I stopped checking after. I think there was too much to be found. So far, I see there is some effort here, and I think that's whatever you can say about accessibility, effort is always the first step. You need to be aware. If you don't know that you can improve something, then yeah, there's not much to improve. If you think you're doing everything correct, you're not going to touch it. So the first thing we see here is one of the most challenging elements, I think, to create. So one of the most challenging widgets, a tree view. You're using the channel in Slack is archived now, by the way. Ooh. I'm just going to check on my... I'm seeing it. I think I'm just seeing it right now. They want to centralize the bug reports on Slack. Oh, so they removed the special access thing for accessibility. Okay. Well, that's up to Slack. Here we can just create issues. And I really like that I can just use issues to do this. I mean, I can create feedback, and I could use this if I... in a short way, if there are some rooms here on Element that are interesting, and that add value to me and to my life. If there's something I want to join, I think I will join it. And if I see issues, I would love to create them on GitHub. I think that's the best thing I can say, I guess. How would I rank it? I would love to give some feedback. I want to improve this environment. It looks good. There's some active effort. I'm now going to check the invite we got. Or is it already this one? I got invited and kicked right away. That's nice. But there's actual effort in here. So there's things we can improve, of course. For example, this is an input. And the input, let me find it here. This is the input. It has a placeholder. And the placeholder becomes gray, so it technically still has a placeholder, but you don't see it as a and when I start typing, it's gone. I would love to have this just have a label or something. You know what name it should have? Just give it a label. You know, it's those small kind of things, but let's I can diverge so easily. Let's just go back. Let's say we're tabbing again. So I go to this button, I go to the tree view, button. I don't know where I am. I'm missing outline here. Oh, I think I'm out of the browser. Okay, so this is probably not tabbable or it doesn't have an outline. Yeah, it's also a div with a roll button. The thing is, I see all these buttons and I don't know why. Why they have a roll button, why they are not native buttons. That's the thing I'm missing so far. So I see a lot of ARIA, and I think I read somewhere that it's being made with React. So a lot of this code is generated by JavaScript. But in my opinion, this could have been a normal button. I mean, there's a lot of CSS. My general experience, and that's really a practical thing as well. If you use normal buttons, it's gonna save you a lot of time. It's not just that buttons are accessible by default. That's really nice. You still have to handle them in the right way. But as a development team as well, you can spend your time and energy on things much more interesting than creating buttons. And this is probably a lot of work. That should not wasn't ever really necessary. We could even check the code quickly if there's something. So there's the GitHub folder, mocks, docs, element.io, res script source. I would expect source. Components. I'm just gonna have a one try at finding this, otherwise there's probably too much in here. Yeah. Factor, the old name. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try and find this. It's not make it more complicated than it has to be. But the first thing, oh, here, I even got links here to the right pages. This is a luxury. I'm gonna get used to this. Accessible button, yeah. So this is TypeScript. The element is based on React. And you've got this entire file. You can disable it, which is rather important. Which also means it has key down events and key up events. Stops the propagation. Yeah, there's a lot of things that come to a button. This entire page of, what is it, almost 4 KB. It's gonna be less zipped, of course, I know, but I don't think it needs to be there. You can usually save some time and some tests. These aren't even the tests. Somebody says, I will use a third-party app for Element when I need it, but it's not bad. Good. Yeah, so far it looks really nice and considerate. It's also nice and contrasty, you know, you can read things, it's all readable. I mean, there are things you can improve, but it functions. That's the important part. So let's, for example, take X. I'm going to take the lazy route. X is an automated test that I like to run very often. It prides itself in having no false positives. So everything it finds, and violations found 3. Can I not zoom this in? Oh, this is not very well for the stream. It says it has 3 violations. Buttons must have discernible text. And it says this about user avatar. Well, that's good because it's going to be fixed anyway. Then it says elements must have sufficient color contrast. And it says so about forget this room. Oh, that's this button. Then I'm going to grab another tool, the color contrast analyzer. This is a separate program. With this tool you can pick 2 colors and see what the contrast is. So yeah, so we have this button that says forget this room. and I have to repeat it because I'm pretty sure not everybody can read it, because the contrast ratio of this button is 2.4 to 1. And even if this qualifies as large text, the ratio should be at least 3.0 to 1. If it's not, if it doesn't qualify as large text, it should even be 4.5 to 1. So this color is not dark enough, basically, to be combined with the white that they have. I mean, I cannot make the white brighter. That's beyond my skills. But the green should be darker. So I'm just gonna use saturation lightness. This is ugly. Don't do this. But basically it should be green. Then that's 3.0. And if you want to make it 4.5, you usually don't use green because it gets this dark tint that's actually really green, and not the mint that we have. I mean, this is UX designer green. UX designers like to use a tint like this. It looks good. But the contrast is not good on white. And I can see here that is this the, I'll take the computed. It says the font size is 14 pixels. 14 pixels is not very big. This qualifies as normal text, which means it should actually be what we just said, a 4.5 ratio to 1. I have seen 6.4 to 1 AAA class contrast. Yeah, well, it depends on the size of the text, basically. I can do here font size 19 pix. Font weight should be so this is so I turned this button from 14 pixels normal to 19 pixels and bold. This qualifies as large text. Now it needs a 3.0 to 1 ratio. I can make it even larger, 24 pixels, and then back to normal size letters. This is also large text. And then again, it should meet at least 3.0 to 1. Because how does it work? Basically, you always need 4.5. Whenever you write text, all this text that you see, it's probably 4.5 to 1. That's what's required. You need sufficient contrast for people to be able to read it. That's WCAG at a double A level, which pretty much everybody follows. Nobody goes for triple A almost, which is kind of sad because I like contrast, but still. Pretty much all text is small, technically. I can even get the criteria here. WCAG contrast minimum. This is the one. Yeah, I'm just going to link it from the understanding. X is a great looking tool. Will definitely add it to my collection. Yeah, I can really recommend it because it doesn't give false positives, so it's really good to use in a build. It's basically an now we're gonna diverge, but hey, that's what we do. That's why it's Ask Me Anything and questions and everything. It has no false positives, so I really like it to have it in a build. Everything it finds, people can fix it, people can work on it. It will not send you working on something that's nothing. Does that even translate well? I don't know. It's everything it says is something useful. And why doesn't it send it to GitHub? Yeah, this one. And the good thing is that it's a JavaScript library. So I'm going to share it in the chat, the link. This is on GitHub. It's a JavaScript library. So you can just put it in your builds. You can put it in your tooling. You can use this wherever you like. Sometimes it can be nice to add a dashboard or something to make the feedback a bit more readable, because the feedback is normally a JSON file. So that's something you can do. But I really like that it gives all issues. And the good thing is also with the browser plugin, I have it here set to violations. And if I want, I wish I could have zoomed into this. This is pretty much an issue with this plugin, really. If you cannot zoom into an accessibility plugin, that's really strange. But every issue you find, it has this Learn More button. And Learn More sends you to DQ University. And DQ University is this big, huge learning website with lots of information. Everything is covered. So every issue you find gets explained as well. And I think that's really useful because it doesn't just help people find issues. That's one thing. You can hire a company for that. You can use other tools for that as well. I mean, finding issues is not the biggest challenge, but it also creates awareness. If you are a developer and you push something to the build, so you have this piece of code and you say, hey, I want to run this in all these browsers and devices, and it's going to get tested, and the test says, hey, you're not doing the best you can. You're failing. And it doesn't even have to be a hard fail. Maybe you can still release it. Maybe people can still use it. But just the fact that it's failing and you can see, hey, how to fix this, it's gonna create some sort of awareness for accessibility, and that's what I really like about X. It's not just a tool to find issues, but it's making people aware. So this, yeah, it's just a huge knowledge base. And when I checked the website, so I saw some contrast issues. I'm gonna guess this combination of colors can be found more often. And it also says form elements must have labels, and I can click here and say highlight. Oh yeah, and then it hits the search field. So the search field, even though it has a placeholder, it says it doesn't have a label. I thought a placeholder could also be the accessible name of a element. Let's see what it says. I have this. Yeah, it says search. It should have a visible text label. That's what Firefox says. But it does have a label. So actually, I don't agree with X here. You know what? We're gonna make an issue with X. That's much better. So we started out because we wanted to see if element was okay, but I'm gonna create an issue with X. I'm gonna say, hey X, this is not right. So what we have here, placeholder does not get recognized as label, because that's basically what it says. The issue is that the label will be invisible when you type. Yeah, I'm not saying this is perfect. I mean, the text search disappears when you need it the most, which is very counterintuitive. But X should check for WCAG issues, and this is not an issue. I'm gonna check learn more to they mention the placeholder? No. I don't think a placeholder is illegal, to put it like that. So yes, if I see this anywhere, I would tell people, yes, please don't use a placeholder. But I think it's allowed technically. So I'm just going to make an issue. Placeholder does not get recognized as label. In this case, you have frying pan as visible label. Yeah, this is the field to fry pans with, or pan fry with. Thanks for reporting issue. If you're reporting a bug, include a description of the issue or code snippets can be produced. Okay. An input with a placeholder. I got a new keyboard and it's still getting used to. Does not get recognized as having a label. Aren't there browsers that don't support placeholders enough? Well, we're gonna check. Can I use placeholder? I think that's not an issue. It should have been there. A placeholder. Yeah, I don't know. CSS input placeholder attribute. It's entirely green. So it's interesting to check, is this an issue maybe in some browsers, but the input placeholder attribute is supported by all current browsers, at least also all the browsers that they support with Element. When you inspect accessibility, if you do not count requirements of latest JavaScript and CSS engine, what do you mean? when we inspect accessibility, we often i11 it's even supported. Yeah, good question. That's always the scary part. When we inspect for accessibility, when I do an audit, for example, we often say, hey, what browsers do you want to support? So they're gonna either say what versions they want supported, and if they don't say it by themselves, so the company or the organization, whoever made it, the audit report should state what browsers were used, so what was checked against. And if there's an issue that has to do with the JavaScript engine or the support or anything, it should be mentioned in the issue. But I don't think that's the case here. An accessible name even. And what happens? I'm just gonna scrap all this. How do they call it? I get a violation on the search input. The input has a placeholder which should create an accessible name. And then I can add the code like this. Yeah, if you use an RSS reader, yeah. If you use an RSS reader, then technically the issue should be either with the reader or the RSS feed. So I guess you could check a feed, see if the RSS feed is giving proper HTML or code. But whatever an RSS reader does, that's beyond WCAG really. You go to a whole different landscape of tools. So when I run X on Firefox at app.element.io, I get a violation on the search input. The input has a placeholder which should create an accessible name, and we show the code. X still gives the violation. Form elements must have labels. Okay. Motivation looks like a false positive. Xcore version. Xcore version. Can we see that somewhere? 3.5.5, I guess. Yeah. Three 3.4.5, I thought. Yeah, no, 4.5.3, so not sharp enough. And 3.5.5 is not. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I always need to check myself for typos. I make too many typos. Browser and assistive technology version. We have Firefox. Which version of Firefox is this? Yeah. Each menu is different. You're not gonna help me because this is Dutch. Firefox help? About Firefox, yeah. 78.02. Sure. So it's Firefox 78. For tooling issues, a Node version platform. Yeah, that's not relevant. So I think this is pretty much it. So just for our own impression as well, I'm gonna open this page in Chrome as well. Oh, and it's nice to see here that the colors that we just saw, the ones that gave an issue, get reused. So if we go to the color contrast analyzer, so this is the same button color that we had before, 2.421, and this sign-in text is even worse because it's on a gray background, so there's a contrast ratio of 2.121. So what this means is if you have any issues with your vision White text on gray looks even worse in my eyes. Oh, I can imagine. Yes, we're going to check that one as well. Oh, it's probably, I missed that. That's even better. I didn't even see it. I just saw the buttons. The issue here, if you have low vision, you're not going to see this. If you are colorblind, if I am walking outside with my phone or my tablet and there is sunshine on my screen, I'm not going to see this nice minty color. But when there is even white on gray, it has a contrast ratio of 1.2 to 1. I can understand why we missed it. So maybe I can make an issue for this later. This text is pretty much unreadable for most people. I think even on a stream, when there's compression, it's even harder. Will be resolved for the next release. Rebranding missed it. Yeah, I guess so. So it's white on gray, and it's everything with mint. Yeah, I hope you can... Oh, zoom back in again. I hope you can see it on the stream, because I can imagine compression just pushes this out completely. But we were testing for X. See, I can do so many things at the same time, but we were looking at X. So I'm going to run X again. Oh, I'm going to say violations, because I don't need the other stuff. And form elements must have labels. Yeah, it also picks the search field. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think it should have an accessible name. Then there's one thing that we can do to check this. This is a bit in depth, because it's a resource that you should not use often or should need often. There's the core accessibility API mappings. I always have to accessible name and description computation. I have to dive in and find where is it again? There's so many resources and there's not really a good overview. Or at least I've never found the overview that I needed. Accessible name. So there's an overview somewhere of how all names get calculated, and even I have to look up again where it is. I thought it was in this one, but it's not. Accessible name, description and mapping. Name computation, name and description. This is more like it. So this is somewhere where you have to be. I'm just gonna search for placeholder. And it's not there. No. We're so close. Name and description. It should be here somewhere. Ever since I had my operation, I find it really hard to read specs and dive into these kind of pages with so much text. So I guess my sympathy has improved. Name computation. Using the rules. Okay. So these should be the rules. It doesn't mention placeholder. It does not mention placeholder. How can it not mention placeholder? So the trick to many things in IT is not knowing that you can use Google, but knowing which sources you can use. This one. Ah, here. Okay, this is new to me. So we're learning, not just the people watching. So I am now in a WCAG criterion. So this is one, understanding success criterion 2.5.3, label in name. I always thought that the placeholder could create a name. But here it says, note that placeholder text within an input field is not considered an appropriate means of providing a label. The HTML5 specification states the placeholder attribute should not be used as an alternative to label. There's a should here. Should means that it's not, that you might not be obligated. So that's something we should watch. Haha. There's also the word must. Then it's an obligation, but should is a bit more lenient. However, it is worth noting that label in HTML5 statement is in code brackets and links to the label element. For the purpose of this label in name success criterion, label is not used in such a programmatic sense, but is simply referring to a text string in close visual proximity to a component. As such, in the absence of any other nearby text string, as described in the... if an input contains placeholder text, such text may be a candidate for label in name. This is supported both through the accessible name calculation, discussed later, and from the practical sense that where a visible label is... Okay. So this is very confusing to me. On one hand it says you should not use placeholder. On the other hand, yes, it's okay. That's very confusing. And it also points to the page that it points back to the page that we just came from. That's nice. So I'm now actually doubting if should I or should I not be able to use a placeholder? Because what did Chrome do? If I use Chrome to inspect these text fields, it says name search. So Chrome, which I can zoom in on, I think, yeah. It also says the accessible name. The name is search. So both Chrome and Firefox say, hey, this input is called search, but X says, hey, it doesn't have a name. That's really strange. So I'm just going to ask the chat just to check. Do you have any experience with placeholder and using it as a name? Do you have an opinion on this? There's been a thread on the WebAIM mailing list. The trick is to have the good resources. Kill placeholders, yes please. Of course, I'm not happy with placeholders, but sometimes when you audit you have to stick to the rules, and that's the hard part of auditing also. So I can add so I can say that both Firefox and Chrome use it, but X does not. So I think this is gonna lead to some discussion, which is always good. Discussion means that we can learn. Jonathan Villa is against, opposed, should not act as a label and should act as a hint. Should we act as source? Yeah, blah blah. It's not really relevant to talk about images. The other thing is, does this also talk about placeholder? No, placeholder links only. Scott also knows quite a lot. We'll invite him sometime. The placeholder attributes. So this is interesting. People don't agree. I mean, I think when you ask anybody that cares about accessibility, they will say don't use the placeholder attribute. There's a really good reason for that, because right now it might have a label visually. Do I still have a tool turned on? I'm just going to refresh for a second. Yeah. So it has a label visually. You can see this field does something. It's called search. And if you start typing in it, it also still says search. But as soon as I start typing, it disappears. So let's say I am on the phone. I have issues with my attention span. There could be any of many reasons why I could be distracted. At this point, when I go back looking to my screen, the label is gone. So at the point that I need it the most, I miss my label, and then there's the issue that sometimes is light gray, which causes contrast issues as well. Can I put it in there and pick it? I think I can. No, I can't. The light gray often also causes contrast issues, so people that have visual disability might miss it easier and faster than people with normal vision, whatever normal vision is. So in general, I would be against placeholders, but should it be an issue with X? I'm not sure. So I'm going to put it like this, and we'll see what they say. I'm going to create this issue. I think it would be really valuable to check this, so I'm going to share this with you. The link is in the chat. It only has one participant now, but I can imagine you want to subscribe to this just to see what the discussion will be, because it gives an issue, and I don't. It's technically not an issue. If you ask me if this were my team, they would look at me and say, "Hey, Eric, what do you think?" And I would say, "Yes, please change that. Put a visual label there. Also put a visual label here for this button." I don't know what it does. Oh, explore rooms. I get a pop-up. Visual label there as well. Here, contrast issue. Contrast issue. Don't click it. Just drag it. So everything with mint contrast issues. Fix that. But also add labels. And here also, see, this is a... Can I even... Yeah, this is also placeholder. But it's always gray. So there are a lot of people that don't see this. That's an issue. This one is even worse than the other one because it doesn't go dark. Is it a placeholder? It's find a room. E.g. example matrix. Yeah, this is even a bigger issue than the other one. And then there's this button. We'll not focus on that, but I think adding labels visually is so much value for a lot of people. So getting rid of placeholders and just adding visual labels would be a big improvement. I think a lot of people would like that. So I'm just going to join now a really big channel because we have to keep moving. I can focus on everything. I'm going to use my mouse to make this smaller. And here again, it's send a message. I can understand why this is here, you know, why they use a placeholder here, because it keeps this nice and small. You get this input bar that's really small, and you save a lot of screen real estate, as they call it. But look at how much space this avatar has. If you want to save space, make the avatar align differently or something. I don't know. Look at how big that is. There's so much white space. And also, which I find distracting right away, but that's more personal than anything. There's no clear separation between where I start typing and where all the messages are. And then when I look here, I see this is an expandable. Ooh. So there was this thing called 2 rooms more, and it's gone now. Can I also right click? Yeah. So now there's a lot more happening. So there's many things I can do, many things I can click, many things I can expect. I'll inspect. I'll even run X again because we have a lot more text. Sometimes it crashes on pages like this because a chat box, which it basically is, adds a lot of text. And now it says 67 violations. A lot of them are with color contrast, which is very understandable because some of them might be in the channel. But if I see there's a link here in the heading, and there's a contrast issue, that's one that can be fixed. I think that's general. And if I check the next one, it's also a link. Then the next one is someone's name. Yeah, that's probably customizable. That's tough to fix. Set a profile picture. Gray and white text. Also not enough contrast. So there are a lot of contrast issues here. And what's the next thing? Buttons must have discernible text. Well, we already had that issue before. So every avatar is also a button. But I can also click the name, yeah. So is that different? Yeah, that's different. Okay, I'm going to close the inspector again so you can see. Can I... I don't know what things do. Oh. Can I close this again? I think so. There's something highlighted. This is using new software. Always interesting. I think this stuff would rock for a user test, but we're not doing that right now. Okay, so if I see a message, I see both an avatar and a name. This one has a title attribute. And it has a span with the role as button. There's another span inside with J. The role is hidden. There's an image inside, and it also has aria hidden. So basically everything that's in this button is hidden. I also don't know why this has a empty alt, which hides the image, and aria hidden. Quite likely this one is superfluous. I like that word. It can be removed. But there should be something naming this. So easy fix would be a edit as HTML, just to give an impression. You could put another span here. You could call it class visually hidden. You often see this name, for example, in Bootstrap. And within the class, you could use the username. So in this case, job. What does this do? It does not add a visual label. That would be even better. We can we close it? Yeah. It does not add a visual label. It's really ugly now because we haven't styled it. But whatever. There's now a text inside the button element, which means that the button element automatically gets an accessible name as well. So that would be the quick fix. We had a label on there previously, but screen reader users reported it as too chatty. We need to find a good balance. Yeah, I'm not. I understand that because you have these two elements that you can both use. So you've got this one which shows a sort of profile, and then you've got another one when you click on the name, and it gets added to the button, to the bottom. I can imagine that you want to use make this into one thing that you can click, and then you get the option here to mention this person. I think that would cut your tab stops in half, so there's less interaction on the page. There's just one big interactive thing, and it would make it much more easy. But you've got so many menus. So this one is interesting. Right click opens 2 menus. Left click opens 1. Yeah, that's the thing with these complicated web apps. There's so many things I can check and so many things I want to do and want to see. If you combine these two into one, I think it makes it more clear for the user as well, because without clicking, I don't know what these do. So if they both load the same profile, I think that would be much easier. I think it would be much more an expected pattern, basically. And then you could here say something like mention this user, send a message to this user. You already have direct message, which is probably another pop-up. Oh, it goes to another page. And I get this. Okay. I hope I don't disturb people by what I'm doing, but hey, that's a different thing. And I'm gonna close this again just to check. Or I have to click the avatar again. See, that's how confusing it is. I just don't know. So I'm going to see here direct message. I'm going to inspect this element. So from the behavior that we just saw, we saw it open another page. But if I look at direct message, it's actually a button. So that's really confusing. So on one hand, it's like a line of text. It looks like a link because of that, but it's not underlined, so it doesn't look like a link. But it does show the little hand symbol with the mouse, so that's behavior that you would expect with a link. But then again, if I look in the code, and what a screen reader user would hear is that it's a button. Yes, indeed, link versus button. I think this is a great example for that. I can imagine these are all, yeah, these are all buttons, but I don't know what to expect here. Like, direct message opens a new page apparently, but I cannot open it in a new tab. I cannot bookmark it, so that's confusing. Jump to read receipt, that is probably an actual button, yeah. Oh, somebody else was banned, good. We don't want Nazis in this channel. I don't know what the channel is, but no Nazis please. Share link to user. Sounds like something that a button maybe, a pop-up something? Yeah, pop-up, okay. So this is a pop-up. Yeah, I'm not going to inspect that further right now. Then we've got mention. Oh, that's basically the same thing as clicking somebody's name. Okay, so it's already there. It's already there. Good. Maybe it just needs a more clear name then. That's easy. So you click somebody name, you mention them, you click their profile and you mention them, and you mention them again. But the only difference, no, yeah, it's exactly the same, even with the same typography and everything. So yeah, that would simplify things. But basically what we just saw is you have this list here to the right bottom, and we're not going to talk about the contrast because that's hopefully going to be fixed. But you have 4 options. One loads a different page, one jumps, one opens up a pop-up, a sort of dialogue, and the other puts some text in your input field. So at least one of those should have been a link. It's easy for a UX designer to see these 4 things and say, hey, they're gonna go into the same spot, so please let them look the same. But from an expectation sort of view, hey, good time zone to you. From an expectation point of view, you would see rather that it's clear if this is a link or a button. I mean, this one says 2 sessions. It looks, it expands even. And then verify, it starts some verification process. For me, this is all very, very cryptical. I don't know what to expect right here. So that's some design stuff. Oh, and what is this? Invite to this room. No, I don't want to invite. I had this arrow here. Where did the arrow go? So I have to go back here. Close, yeah. But close does not close it. It actually shows something. Only this really closes it. This is rather slow, or is it? Yeah, this is just slow. Okay, so design has definitely tried to make the mint links in app actions and blue links as external links, but recently opted to throw away the text decoration underlines. Oh, it's typically design, right? Well, you can ask them if they want to design for all users or just some. I think underlines are a really clear way of showing what to expect. I mean, these are really clearly links. They still could use the underline, but it's already the right type of blue. See, that's what you want. I don't know what kind of page I just went to, but that's a link. That's clear. This is a link. That's clear. Are there any links? This is probably, yeah, it has a hover link. Why not then show it always? See, links are links. Yeah, that's messy. So I'm just gonna recap because I can check so many things, and maybe I can use this some more and give some more issues, things that can be fixed. See if it hasn't been fixed already or isn't planned to be fixed. Some things that stand out. Well, I'm gonna zoom out first. This is the normal zoom level, and I can go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps, 7 steps. I can zoom in a lot. I think that's pretty good. It gets strange at this size, but I can zoom in a lot. So if I look at the screen size, that's pretty good. That has been considered. It's very usable. I still have the same elements as when I zoom out. So I like that a lot. When we look at color contrast, well, most of it is in the mint and in the light gray shades. If you want a good user experience, you should not use too much light shades of gray. Often the more graphical designer types of persons like this shade of gray, but when you look at user experience, it's just not very good. So the contrast could definitely be improved. Also with these links, we saw the feedback from Axe. It said increase the contrast on many things. What else can we check? Well, we check the keywords, so we check it again on this page. We're still in the tree view, and the buttons in the tree view. I'm just going to follow it with my mouse. It has the default outline, so everybody should be able to see it. Then it goes to the top bar. Link, link, button, 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 button. That's all good. And it goes to the main chat box. And then it goes message to message to message, yeah. And then when I go here, I can shift tab. Shift tab goes nowhere, I guess. Okay, that's something I miss here. Shift tab does not go out. So if there's something to improve for keyboards, shift tab should go somewhere. Let's say, is this something? Does it do something? Oh, this is strange. It gives me a pointer, but it doesn't do anything. So what is it? I guess it's like an avatar that we saw before. They're clickable by default. So this is some sort of empty button that does nothing. So do something here. Shift tab and give me my own profile or something, or a menu, or I don't know. But Shift tab should leave this. This is a keyboard trap. And if I tap forward, I also cannot tap forward, does it? Because tab is used in the text somehow. So I can mention a name, then tab, and it turns into a mention. So yeah, once you are typing, keyboard navigation is really limited. I would love to see that improved. These buttons can be reached, but only when you click out of wherever you were. And then there's this floating action button. Ooh, expand, collapse. What does it do? I'm just gonna refresh once. I don't know what I just did. Now it's gone again. Oh, it has to do with scrolling. There's a lot of internal pushback complaining about lost muscle memory by changing how the autocomplete works. Yeah, because if I understand correctly, the tab is specific behavior that's not supported right now, and the tab is used for something else, so they're probably gonna say, hey, this tab stuff, don't touch it. People are used to it. Okay, so we have this one. So this is kind of, this button is pretty much unreachable by keyboard, because when I'm here and I go Shift tab, I'm not going there. And when I go through all the chat, I will get to the end of the page and the button will disappear. So maybe this button to scroll down could be put next to the input, but that assumes that you can actually leave the input, which is a lot to change probably. So how does that even work? I'm just gonna check Slack in another. Slack is also strange, by the way. So many tab stops for each message. Yeah, I guess text inputs, you know, they are this field by them, this whole world in themselves. There is a set of dedicated keyboard shortcuts which might be helpful page reachable, Control /. I didn't know. Keyboard shortcuts. So you need to know first that this does exist. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but if keyboard shortcuts are a solution, then maybe keep the default keyboard behavior, let people use their tab, and if you want to mention somebody, make a keyboard shortcut for that. If your designers like keyboard shortcuts, let them have their keyboard shortcut, and do like Control M or whatever. Do we have one already? Yeah, we have these control combinations. I could now do Control M and it would mention, for example. Then we would have keyboard navigation back. A lot of people like keyboard navigation. If I'm right here, I'm typing something, I want to be able to tap to the next button. That's just power user behavior. Smileys, yeah, you want to tap to this stuff. People are chatting, they want interaction, they want the page to be interactive, they want to be able to control whatever they're doing. Let them use the keyboard when they can. That's a power user behavior. Okay, so we've got the screen. The way Slack does it, initiate using a token like add is reasonable enough. We're not within an expanded autocomplete tab. It's usable. Yeah, I'm not gonna say Slack is perfect because I just press Slack and it went everywhere. My focus. So it's. But they have this add thing, right? That's pretty smart, I guess. It works for Twitter as well. Well, we looked at the screen size, we've looked at the contrast, we even ran X to see what it does. What else can we do? I'm just gonna check some notes I have. I mean, it's about time I round up. I'm getting tired as well. Screen size, contrast, keyboard. I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, there's no video. That would be a great start. I think the biggest issues here are the color contrast stuff and being able to use it with a keyboard. I think that would be helpful for a lot of people. I could say those are accessibility issues, but I think they're just general issues that could help a lot of people. So I'm not going to make issues right now. There's nothing that really stands out, especially if a lot of stuff is going to change. But that's the stuff probably that's most reasonable. And maybe some lines here and there. If you're talking to UX anyway, add some lines, add some zones. Make sure that you can actually see where you are. I mean, where does this end? Where does the chat end? If this had a... Can I just inspect it and just fake it? It's always so tempting to start doing things in code. But if this just had a background of CCC, that's too old. What do we do these days? DDD. And ignore the gray text. But then you already see, oh, this is where the chat starts and this is where things end. And then there's this expand. So yeah, sort of a sidebar, but sort of don't. Yeah, I think it would be very reasonable to talk to UX here and see what they want to do. One page at a time. I think it's pretty good for a first impression. There's a lot that can be improved, but it's also very usable. So recapping once again, contrast, tab behavior, maybe less area when it's not needed. And if we're looking to perfect the whole experience, less title attributes and less area when it's not needed. It's just gonna save a lot of time. Just use buttons when you can. It's so useful. I can imagine, for example, that these buttons do not work when you want to submit a form. That's probably specific behavior that's not integrated. There's so much stuff that you can do with a button. The keyboard behavior is... Can I... Yeah, that's also... See, when I press space, it works on key up. And when I press enter, it works on key down. Those are specifics that people often forget. I'm just gonna round it up here, I think. So mostly contrast and tab. That's the things that can be improved. If you want to perfect it, title attributes, no area, that's unnecessary. A lot of new issues have been opened based on your feedback. Oh, annoyingly, a few of them are regressions from the rebrand. Yeah, sorry about that. Which will make sure it gets some rethinking. Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this, Eric. Well, glad to hear. Really enjoyed following along. I hope that your words help me convince internal to fix the autocomplete and persuade design. Yeah, if I can upvote anything, if I can leave my voice somewhere in GitHub, feel free to send me a message on Twitter or whatever. I'm glad to formulate this bigger than I just did. It looks like a really nice piece of software, and I'm glad to have met this. I hope it's getting some more support because it feels really good, and there's some actual feedback and people working on it that want some feedback. I'm gonna end it right here. Just want to say next week we're gonna stream on Thursday again because it's always Thursday. And can I show? Yeah, I can show. We're gonna have another Eric on the show because we can never have enough Erics. No. Yeah. Why don't I get the URLs that I want? I was about to share. So next week, I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna share the URL. This is gonna be our guest next week, Eric. He used to be with W3C. He is very active with Nobility, also an accessibility company. And he's going to talk with us next week. I'm very curious to be talking with him and see what he wants to share. So I hope to see you all next week. Share your experience. Share most of all your questions. Make it very hard for Eric. I like that. And thank you so far. Thank you for following along, and I hope to see you again. And thanks.